So we're having a few slight technical difficulty in that I'm not allowed to share my screen from my phone. So I was going to have a live kind of demo, but we'll still make it work, but it's going to be a bit sort of more show and tell. So I'll have to show you on my phone, but we'll get there. All the steps and the screenshots and everything are detailed in the guide that's on the web page. So we'll see that. And I'll walk through all the stuff that you do on the website that goes with the app. Because I can share that screen, so that will work. But we'll get there. My suggestion would be that to change your view to speakers, that what you'll see will be bigger, because at the moment, if everyone's just a small square, it'll be difficult to see what's on my phone. But if it's just speaker, then you'll be able to see, hopefully be able to see my phone a bit better. So the app is on your phone. You can find it on the Google Play Store for Android, or on the Apple App Store if you have an Apple or an iPhone. And if you just search WallCAP, it'll come up. And then you just have to download that if you haven't done that yet. And once it's downloaded onto your phone, you need an account. And this account is different than your volunteer portal account. So if you haven't set that up yet, then it's easy to do, but it's just a separate account. So once you have the app downloaded and you've made your account, which you can do through either the app or the company website, then when you click on the app, you get your login screens. You'll see the WallCAP logo and Heritage Lottery logo, and you just fill in your details and then hit the sign in button at the bottom. And once it's logged you in, it will, you have to have if you don't have your GPS turned on your phone, it'll request that you do that. And so once you do that, it'll pop up with the map, it'll zoom in on your location. And then at the bottom of that screen, it has any of the records that you've created within the app that show up at the bottom as like a list. And there's an option at the top to either see my albums or to see albums that have been created by other people. So it's the other option. So at the moment, I'm on the albums that I've created, and most of these, they're all sort of test ones. They're not any sort of sites that we've sort of targeted yet, but it's just things that I've been working with as we've worked through. And most of them are in Newcastle now. There's a couple in Edinburgh because I've moved actually. But if I scroll up, I get my whole list. You can see all of the different records that I've made that pop up with just like sort of a photo cover. And if I click on any of those, so this is the exterior of St. Mary's Chapel. I can click on that and it will take me to the record on the map. And I can then click on photos, 3D view, or detail, because I've added photos and I've created the 3D record for that that feature. If I click on the photos button, it will take me to the album with all of the photos that I've loaded into that record. And you can click on those and they get bigger. If I click on detail, then I can see all of the information that I've inputted into that. Sorry, it's all backwards for you. I'm sorry, unfortunately, but I can see all of the information that's been put into that record. So it just says, the name and the description, the status of that structure, whether it's got damage or it's not damaged. There's a drop-down menu for that. What type of structure it is, and then some location details, and some information about who built it and when it was built and things like that. So that's kind of all the information that will go into that, and I'll walk through that in a moment. And then because I've already made the 3D model of this, there's the 3D view button in the middle. So let's click on that. And just loading, sorry. This brings up the 3D model of that. It's made out of those photos. sort of spin around. Sorry, this is a bit difficult looking in the wrong direction, but yeah, you get the idea. There's you get the 3D model of that bit of wall that I've taken photos of. So that's from this sort of list at the bottom of that page. But again, if I just scroll back to the map, then I can you can click on any of the records that show up on the map, and it gives you those same options. So there's just sort of 2 ways to navigate to that. And it's the same on the others button. I just have to find one. So yeah, so same on the others button, you get the map, and then there's no records that someone else has created in Newcastle yet. But if I scroll up from the bottom, you can see where some of the other records are. And our development team was based in Nepal, so we have a bunch of test sort of records from Nepal, which are sort of really interesting, like Buddha statues and things that they've taken photos of. And then there's a few from elsewhere. So that's reconstruction of Indolanda and a few other bits. So there's various sort of things on there. And again, you can click on those and see the 3D models and things like that. So that's sort of the main navigation on the app. And we can, at the end, once we've kind of done this whole run through, if anyone has any questions, we can go through that. But if there's anything that you don't want to forget to ask, you can pop it in the chat now, and then I'll come back to it. If you want to create a record on the app, you can either click the green plus button in the bottom corner. That's under My Album. So that's on, you have to be on the My Album tab and then press the green plus, or next to the home bar at the top, if you click the 3 lines, then you get a few other options, and there's an add album option just at the top of that list. So if I click the green plus, then it takes me to that sort of information page. And you can input all of the information about a structure. So that's, and you're required to, have something in every line, but if you're not sure about the information that needs to go there, then just add a question mark or ND or unknown or NA or whatever, just something so we know that we know that there's not missing information, and so that it'll allow you to complete that record. I've sort of half made a record on here, so I didn't have to type it all in while I was chatting with you. So let's go to that, sorry. So this is, I've taken some pictures of a interesting sort of gravestone that I found in a churchyard. So I've just put in like a name of the album, and then I've got some notes about it, an album description. And because like the stone is kind of degraded, I've put that it has partial damage, and kind of just gone through. So most of these have drop-down menus, and they're all explained kind of more clearly in the guide. That'll probably be easiest rather than me going through every single one now. But just going through and making sure that I've picked something for each of those things. And the terminology was made by the app developers. And so some of it is a bit odd, but just pick the best option. And if it's something that's not it doesn't quite fit, just pick something, and then in the notes section, add more detail in the notes section about what you've taken photos of if it doesn't quite fit with the kind of descriptive options in the drop-down menu. But you'll have to sort of pick something just because of the way it's been set up. And once you have that album created, and you've added in all that detail, what it'll do when you have to sort of, and the other thing on the app is you have to set the location. So there's a pick location button, and you just drop the pin, which should, if you're standing near the feature, it'll just drop where you're standing, and you just have to set that. And if you're not near the feature that you're recording in the app, then you can just drag the map to that location and then set the location. So it's all kind of just moving the map around to do that. But at the bottom of that record, there's the options to upload the photos. So there's an images button and then an upload. So to get the photos onto the app, you hit the images button, and then it'll say, do you want to, you can choose your camera, so that's the top option, or choose gallery. So if you haven't taken photos of that feature yet, you click on the choose camera option and you can take photos right away through this app. If you have taken photos already and you just want to upload them, then you go to the gallery and then select the photos you want to add. So I've got photos in the gallery that I want to add. So I'm just going to select all of these photos and add them in. And then what should happen is, it'll show the number of photos that you've selected or taken next to that. So they say images and then the number. So I've got 19. And then to add them to the actual record, you're going to hit the upload button. And a little pop-up pops up and says, are you sure you want to upload these photos? Oh, sorry. There. And then I'm just going to hit yes. And then you get a little pop-up that's telling you kind of progress bar of how long it's taking. So that'll just take a couple minutes to do. And there are some size limitations about how many photos you can upload through the app itself, kind of in one go. And I think that's sort of to save your data if you were out doing this in the field. But you can upload multiple batches of photos through the app. So if you took lots of photos of something, you can add photos multiple times in different batches, or you can do it through the website in one big batch, because there's no size limit there, but I'll show you that in a moment. Sorry, that's just loading. I'm at 85%. So it's pretty quick to upload. It's not too bad. And oh, there we go. 100%. And yeah, so now it's uploaded those images successfully. So I've got a little confirmation thing. I'm just gonna hit OK. And now that I've done that, we get a third button at the bottom, and that says view. So I can just click on that, and I can see all of the photos that I've uploaded into that record. So that's the main bits that you do in the app itself. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen from the computer and show you the the next steps that you do through the website. So right. So this is the web version of the app. So they kind of work in tandem, the app on your phone and the website itself. So again, you can see here we've got we've got where you can see where all the records are. So all of these dots are different records, and on the website it's not divided between the ones you've created and the ones other people have created, so you can just see all of them. But you can see where we've been testing things out, and essentially you can see where we all live, because that's where we've been testing things during lockdown and things. But here I'll go to the records I've been working on here. So these are all in a churchyard, not too far from where I am, and so this is the record. I labeled it no photos, so I knew which one to click on. But this is the one we just added photos to through the app. So we can see all of those pop up down here at the bottom. And you can see there's 4 different ones there, but they're of 2 different features. So when you get to the website, though, you have to log in to kind of have full access to everything. And that login option, there's, because I'm logged in at the moment, but usually there's an arrow pointing to the right here that you click on, and that allows you to log in. And once you're logged in, you can see all of the records and everything. But the next step in the sort of record creation, before you can make the 3D model and things, is you have to finalize a record. And so it's just kind of a final check before you kind of can do the rest of the processing on the records. And so to access that, you click on this little gear symbol here on the left-hand side. So I click that. I have a few extra settings because I've got admin access to the website. But when you click on this, you should be able to see albums and 2D face annotation and possibly the settings, but you won't see the users. That's just something that I see at the moment. But we go to albums, and you can see here we've got a few. There's a few that haven't kind of gone through the final check process yet. But what I'm going to do is I've got this. There's the two now because we added the photos. But all we need to do is you can view the album by clicking on this little eye symbol. And that takes me here, and I can just see all of the photos and just double check, like in case you added something you don't want to include, or it's like from the wrong feature or something like that. You can just click on one, and then if it's, say you don't want to have that in the album, you can just delete this or so exclude from 3D processing, so it knows not to use that photo by clicking this red X. But if you're happy with it, then you can hit finalize album here. Or the other option, if I go back using this little button, is you can finalize the album by clicking the check mark here as well. So there's kind of multiple ways to do that. But what will happen is that it'll ask you if you want to finalize that, and you just click the finalize button. And it's that easy. Like it's an automatic, it's an immediate process or whatever, but it's just that final check to make sure we've got all the photos that we want and things like that. So finalize that one as well. And so once that's done, once you've kind of double checked your record and you're happy with the photos and finalize it, you go to the second tab up here, so this finalize tab. And now your the records will show up. When you first go on to the website, it'll be in this sort of album ID order. So because there's lots of records in here at the moment, the ones I've just added in are at the very end. So you can either just change the order by, I can go from highest to lowest instead of lowest to highest, or I can click and navigate through using the arrow buttons here. But yes, the ones that I've just added are here. And so this is the point where we start the 3D modeling process. And it takes a bit of time to run, but it's all an automated process. You just have to start the process. But you do that by clicking these little sort of two circular arrow buttons. And again, there's closer up screenshots of all of these buttons in the guide to make that a bit easier. But I'm just going to click that button. I get a warning sort of message. And yeah, it says this may take a while, and that'll depend on the size of the photos and how complicated the feature is. But it all happens in the background. So you can just start it running. That's fine. So I'm going to say generate. And I'll also get this other one started as well, since we're here. That's fine. And what will happen is once you've started the modeling process, when it's finished, you'll get an email that tells you it's done. So you can just start it running, and you can close the website down, and you can go off and do whatever you want and come back to it a couple of days later even, but you'll get an email when it's finished. And it'll take, when I ran these test ones earlier today, it took 20 minutes maybe to run each model. Like, it wasn't too bad. But again, if there's lots that are being run at the same time, because various, once everyone's in the app and trying things, so if people are running models, it might take a little bit longer. Or if you've got lots of photos or a more complicated feature, it'll take a little bit longer. But yeah, but the email notification is handy because you don't have to sit and watch the gear spinning on the website. So, and then once it's done, you get a few more options that pop up in the the menu here. And so you can see, like this is before, it only had the 3 options, and now there's this whole string of them. So I'm going to say, we can have a look at what a 3D model looks like. So to view the 3D model, it says it's 3D with the 2 arrows around it. So I'm going to click on that. And that opens a new window. And this is my gravestone that I took photos of. So you can see though how it kind of, I can't actually make it level. And this is one of the sort of last bugs in the sort of 3D modeling process that we haven't quite been able to get sorted out. Essentially the automated process can't tell which way is up when it's making the model, and so it'll make the model, but they come out a bit wonky in the sense that they're sort of sitting sideways or whatever in space. And so that's not really a big problem. It's just your models might look, it'll just get to a point where you can't, like that's as sort of level as I can get it, really. But you can zoom in, and the detail is quite good if you've got the photos right. And I'll show you an example of how I kind of took the photos in a minute. But I was looking at this, and I can make out sort of in the memory of Robert Stevenson, I think. So, which is quite good because I couldn't really, it's not the easiest to read because it's kind of quite worn. So yeah, so you can play with that a little bit, which is kind of cool. And this is the other, so this is the gravestone that I uploaded the photos for through the app. And let me trace this, so we spin it. Yeah, so you can see again, I can't quite make it vertical, but this one turned out, I like how the skull came out quite clearly, which is pretty cool. But this is what caught my eye in the when I was walking through the cemetery, was that it had these 2 skulls on it, which is a bit morbid for you probably wouldn't do that nowadays on a tombstone. But that's that. And then sometimes when you make the 3D model the first time, it doesn't quite process it correctly. And so if say it comes out and it's all weird and pixelated, and it just doesn't look anything like what it should, you can rerun the 3D modeling process, and I find sometimes that does fix the issue. So that's just this reprocess 3D model. I guess the second time through, it just knows where things are a bit better, and you can it kind of can fix that. And say you made the model and you don't want it to be visible, you can unpublish it so that people just can't see it. And if you lose the photos, you want to download them, or this is more for, I think, on our end of things, is that if we want the photos, we can download the photos. But then the key thing that we want to do with this is annotate, add detail to that photo so we know what we're looking at, or to that sort of feature. And you can highlight areas that you think are, like if you've taken photos of the wall of a later building, you can highlight where you think the reused Roman stone is, or I don't know, there's a bit of carved Roman stone in a wall, you can pick that out, or something like that. So you can kind of add detail to that record. So I'll walk you through that process now. That one. So with this, you have to add sort of a flat image to this. So I'm going to add a face, and I'm just going to select, depending on what the photo is that you're annotating, you're going to kind of pick which works. But this is the front, and you just click on this space, and it pops up. So I took, and again, I'll walk through the photo, which kind of how to take the photos in a minute, but I've taken one photo that shows the whole gravestone as, in sort of as flat as possible. So I'm just going to select that and open it and add. And it just takes a minute to load. There we go. And now to add that detail to this photo, I'm just going to click on this little pencil and it says annotate face. So click on that, and then I get the image shows up here, and I can zoom in and drag it around. So if you've got a picture and it's a big wall, you can zoom right in to the detail that you need to annotate whatever it is. And I'm just zooming with my the scroll wheel on my mouse, but you can also use these plus and minus buttons in the top corner. And if you zoom right in, you kind of lose where you're at. If you want to zoom all the way out all at once, you can hit this fit image button, which is below the plus and minus, and that just takes you to the full image again. And then the way to add the detail to the photo is these three buttons on the right-hand side. And so we've got a point if you just want to add a dot to the record, or a line, or a polygon, which is like an area. So I'll show you each of those now. So I'm going to start with add a point. So if I click on that, then I get this thing that says please draw inside the image. So I can't draw on the white bit. And once I'm over top of the image, you can see that there's a little blue dot at the end of my cursor. And so I can just, I can move around and I get that blue dot. And so I'm just going to put that over the area that I want to highlight. So I'm going to put it on this sort of half circle of stone here. And I'm just going to click once, and that turns into a yellow dot, and I no longer have a dot at the end of my cursor. And then on the right, I'm going to add the detail to that. So I'm going to pick what the feature is. So we've kind of got a prescribed list here. So this first one, the feature option is kind of what it is more generally. So we've got wall, foundation, window, doorway, roof, decorative / extra, and other. So I'm going to say this is decorative, and I'm going to click on that. And then on the attribute, in this case, it gives me, again, some options. And if you hover over each of those, if it has a little bit of a definition or explanation what that is, it'll pop up in that gray. So this inscription says carved letters, words, or numbers. Carved stone, it gives a bit more detail about what that should actually entail. And so this is some carved stone, so I'm just going to click on that. And so that gives me my two kind of bits of information, and then I can click add, and that's kind of on there, and it's here. And so that's great. And then it's the same sort of process for drawing a line. So I'm going to click on the line option. And this time you can do, like multiple, it can have, the line doesn't have to be like one, like, a point A and point B. It doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be zigzag or whatever shape it needs to be. So I'm going to draw in this kind of bit on the side. And I just clicked once at the top, and I can add in a point in the middle if I want. And so you can see there I've got a point in the middle, and then I'm going to just add my point at the bottom. And to close the line, or to end the line, you just double click. And now I've got that yellow line on the screen. And it's the same sort of process. You just pick your feature. So this time this isn't going to be accurate, but I'm just going to pick something just so we can kind of go through the different options. But so I'm going to say wall, and then you can see we've got under wall, we've got all these other different options. And again, if you hover over them, if there's no definition, because it's something kind of obvious like stairs, then it says there's no definition. But if it's something sort of slightly more technical, then it does have a definition attached to that. So you can kind of see what you want to put on. So I'm just going to say stonework, just for the sake of it, and add that in. And finally, we've got our polygon or area option. And so I'm going to click on that. And again, you get your blue dot, and it's not a click and drag to draw like a rectangle or anything. It's a free drawing. So you can add whatever shape you want to that. So I'm just going to click along and follow the shape of this feature, the top. And it's the same, you can either double click to end that, or you can join up with your, it'll sort of snap to the end as well, and then double click to close that off. And you can see I've got my sort of polygon highlighted at the top. If what you're annotating doesn't fit into any of these sort of prescribed categories, you can go to other, and then the attribute option becomes a free text box. So you can add whatever information you want to that. And so I can, yeah, I don't know, just that carved stone. Or whatever else you need to add to that. And you can add. So what you could do in this sense is say, say there's like an area of reused Roman stone that you wanted to highlight. You could draw a, you could draw a the polygon around that, and pick a category or whatever that is, but stonework with mortar or something for a wall. But if you wanted to add a bit more detail, you could then add a point annotation to like within that area and go other, and then have the free text and add more detail, something like that. If you wanted to, if you wanted that extra bit of detail. And so once you're done annotating, you just hit the back button, which is this arrow in the top, and that takes you back to faces. And it's that, and I'm here. And you can always add more than one sort of annotation face photo to each record. You just have to keep adding them, and it's the same process. And again, I'm just going to go back, and I'm back to this, and yeah, so those are still processing away. But yeah, the running the 3D model and the annotation process are only possible on the website. But everything else you can do on the app or the website. So making a record, editing the record, adding photos to that record, all of that can be done either online or on the app. And I was going to quickly just sort of show you kind of when you're taking photos to do this 3D modeling process. If you want the model to come out nice, then there's sort of you have to take the photos in a certain way. And so I'll just show you with what I've done with the photos that I took of these tombstones as an example. So because we're going to do the annotation, I made sure I took one photo that showed the whole tombstone as a flat face. So say there was like if you've got a building or something that's got obviously like multiple sides to it, make sure you take a flat photo of each of the sides of that building to get to do the annotation. But then after that, essentially I kind of thought about, you want to think about taking sort of a grid of photos over that area or feature that you're taking photos of. And the reason we do that is that to make sure you get good coverage and good detail in the photos. But you also want to make sure that there's some overlap between the photos so that they can, when you're doing the 3D modeling, to do the 3D, to make it 3D, it kind of lines up those different photos, and then is able to process that into a 3D image. So you can see to do like the top of the tombstone here is sort of, I've kind of divided it into three. I think I did 3 rows. So I've gone along the top, and then kind of dropped down and came along sort of along the middle, and then dropped down and did the bottom. So you can see that I've got kind of the corner, and then a bit more of the middle, and the middle of the tombstone. Oh, has someone got their sound on? Make sure we're muted. Yeah, so we've got kind of, you can see like I've come across, and there's you can kind of see as I've moved across the top of the tombstone, there's overlap between between each subsequent photo. And then I've dropped down, and I've done the same across the middle, like moving back in the other direction, and I dropped down again and did along the bottom. And then I took a few photos sort of at angles to the sides and sort of across the front, that same sort of the grid kind of over the whole thing, get this whole thing sort of in an arc. And then if there's areas of particular detail that you want captured, then I've taken a few photos of those in more detail, but the same kind of process where I've got sort of different angles and stuff of this carved bit at the top because I thought it was a bit interesting. And I did the same, kind of took a few different photos of the inscribed portion as well. And that just helps because to have like the higher detail of those areas that are more interesting or important that you're trying to capture in your record. I did the same sort of thing with this other tombstone. So I've got the flat image for the annotation process. And then I've done the kind of grid moving across and around the tombstone to kind of be able to capture as much detail as I could. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything. If in a minute when I stop sharing, we'll sort of stop the recorded portion, and you can ask me all sorts of questions, and I can go run through things again, do all sorts of stuff. But I'll just show you quickly the guide. So this stone sourcing dispersal stone recording app guide is on the SSD in action page on the website. And that website has kind of all of our information. It's kind of the landing page for all of the SSD resources now. But this goes through in detail about accessing, so where you can download the app, creating an account, and how you access everything, and yeah, exploring existing albums, both on the app and the website, and the process of creating an album. And this shows you all of the different options that exist in these, like the drop-down menus, just because I didn't want to run through all of them on here. But yeah, so that shows you all of the options there. And I've got a bit of information about how to take the photos. So you can see here with the grid, and you can take lots of photos to get lots of detail, but you do need to have that sort of overlap. And if you want, you know, we can't make a 3D model out of, I'd say less than, I'd say if you had 5 or fewer photos, you probably won't get a 3D model. It probably won't have enough information to do that. That's fine. Sometimes it's something that it's not going to work as a 3D model, or it's not really necessary, but yeah, it won't really process it. And then yeah, choosing the album, or adding photos to the album, again on the app or on the website, and then the 3D modeling process and the annotation process. So it's got everything in detail with, and it ends with kind of all the descriptions of the feature and attribute terms when you're annotating with the definitions. So it runs through everything in more detail with lots of screenshots and description and everything like that, and highlights buttons and everything. So if you weren't able to see with the shared screen, because depending on how big your screen is, it might have been difficult to see. But it does run through all of that on here. Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll sort of say is that with the 3D modeling, it was kind of, the 3D modeling was sort of a fun sort of extra feature that we did. And if you run the model and it doesn't work, that's fine. Don't worry, because we can always run it's probably more it's not that your photos are bad or anything like that. It's probably more that the automated process just isn't quite working properly. But what we can do is like that, we will still have the photos, and we can always, if it's something that we want to have a 3D model of, Alex can run that in the background for us ourselves, and so we can always get that information later. But to get to the annotation portion of this sort of process, you have to run a 3D model. But yeah, but if the model doesn't work, that's fine. You can always still do everything else. So that's okay. Yeah, but I think, yeah, if we end the recording there, Carrie, and people can ask me a million questions.